Hey guys, welcome back to the series of cost accounting standards that we have just started with the introductory lecture, and now we are going to start with our first cost accounting standard, that is classification of cost. So before we start, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you get all the notification as soon as we upload the cost accounting standards and the other useful stuff. The whole lectures, conceptual lectures, are available free of cost on YouTube. The handbooks are available from our website www.ksjteaching.org. And what about these cost accounting standard notes, sir? These are available free of cost on our mobile app. The links are given in the description of this video. Just go through it. These are available free of cost on our mobile app. Download the mobile app, available for both Android and iOS. And from there, go to the free section and download these notes of cost accounting standards. Okay, so let's start with our cost accounting standard, that is classification of cost. Now, what is this classification of cost? Very important standard. This is the base of costing. He says the standard deals with the principles of classification of cost for determining the cost of a product or the service. Let's take an example. Let's say you are into manufacturing a t-shirt. Right now, if you are manufacturing a t-shirt, obviously you will be incurring the cost on that t-shirt. Definitely, sir. Now, how you are recording the cost, let's look at that. You are recording the cost at rupees 100 paid to Ram. Then you say rupees 2000 paid to Sham. Then you say rupees 500 paid to Mr. A. Then rupees 1000 paid to Mr. B. Now this is how you have recorded your cost. Tell me, is it the right way? Sir, this is quite vague. Do you know that for what you have paid rupees 100? Do you know for what you have paid rupees 2000 or 500 or 100,000 to these respective people? No. So he says there should be the proper principles which can be uniformly applied. Now, if I say this 100 rupees is paid because we purchased material from Ram, right? This is again paid for material which is used in the manufacturing of that t-shirt. This 500 is paid for the labor, that is Mr. A was involved in the manufacturing process. Mr. B again paid for labor. Now it makes sense, isn't it? That this is your material cost, this is your labor cost. So the classification of the cost is very important under the common headings depending upon the nature of the cost or the other factors. Right? We should be classifying them under a common heading. Now this is quite vague if we say 100 paid to Ram, 2000 paid to Sham, 500 paid. For what you have paid? You don't know that. Isn't it? So you should classify your cost properly. You should know that how we are classifying the cost. That is what this standard says. What is the objective? The objective of this standard is to bring uniformity and consistency in the principles of classification of cost for disclosure and presentation in the cost statement. Now, if we say that we have to present this thing in the cost sheet, can you present this part in the cost sheet, that paid to Ram, Sham, Mr. A? Under which head will you write it? You won't know, right? And if it is classified as material cost or labor cost, then what will happen? Yes, you can easily identify. If it is a direct material cost, we have to take it accordingly. And if it is an indirect material or labor cost, then we have to take it under factory overheads. Clear? So that is why this classification of the cost is very, very important. The scope, this standard shall be applied to the cost statements which require the classification, presentation and disclosure of cost, including those requiring the attestation. So this is applicable. This is applicable for all those cost statements where we are required to show the cost properly under the various headings. Right? So principles of classification, the cost shall be classified by the process of grouping the components of cost under a common designation. For example, we say that all the indirect costs should be classified as overheads. Isn't it? All the costs which are related to the selling and distribution expenses, that should be classified as selling and distribution overheads. Right? So this is how it should be classified that the common components of the cost, they should be grouped and put under one head on the basis of similarities of the nature, attributes or relations. The items grouped under the common head shall be further classified according to their fundamental differences. Now that is the depth of it, that you can further do the classification based on the functional differences, right? The first thing that we have done is we have classified into material cost and labor cost. Then we can classify it into direct material cost and indirect material cost. So this is the further classification, indirect material cost. Now this is further classification based on the fundamental differences. What is the difference between direct material cost and indirect material cost? The fundamental difference is that this direct material cost can be identified in 1 unit of finished product, and this indirect material cost, it cannot be identified in 1 unit of finished product. So this is the fundamental difference between the two, right? Broad classification is material cost. Then based on the fundamental differences, we are doing the further classification into direct material cost and indirect material cost. So this is how the classification will take place, right? So classification, how by the various methods, how we can classify on the nature of expense. Nature of expense means whether it is a material cost or it is a labor cost, employee or labor cost, or whether it is related to the expenses or what we call it as overheads. So what is the nature of an expense? According to that we can classify. Then we can classify on the basis of traceability to the cost object. What is a cost object? The cost object is for which the cost is being calculated. Now traceability means whether we can identify that cost in 1 unit of that cost object. If we are able to, then it is a direct cost or it is an indirect cost. So basically this is into direct cost and indirect cost, that how the traceability is to one cost object, 1 unit of the cost object. If we are able to identify the cost directly with 1 unit, then it is a direct cost, otherwise it is a indirect cost. By function, we can classify it into production cost, administration cost, selling cost, distribution cost, research cost, development cost. So according to the function also we can classify the cost, that this cost is particularly related to selling expenses, this is particularly related to distribution, this is particularly related to administration, and further how we can further classify, the administration can be further classified into related to production, or it can be related to the general administration overheads also, right? So administration cost is there. After that, by the nature of behavior, behavior means whether it is a fixed cost, whether it is a variable cost or a semi-variable cost. The fixed cost is the one which will not change with the change in the level of activity. Variable cost will change with the level of activity. Semi-variable cost, it will be fixed to some extent. After that, it will be variable. So according to the behavior of it, whether that cost is changing or not, whether the behavior is changing or not, we can classify it. Then by the nature of production or operation expenses, that whether it is a process cost, whether it is a contract cost, that what type of industry it is, what type of an activity it is, right? Whether it is a service cost, whether it is a batch cost, so it is dependent upon the activity that we are carrying on. So based on that, we can also classify the cost, right? So disclosure, that everything when there is a change in it, we have to disclose it. Any change in the classification of cost shall be made only if it is required by the law or for the compliance with the cost accounting standard, or such change would result in more appropriate preparation or presentation of cost statement. So if you feel that the change in the classification is quite relevant for any of the people around there, or it is relevant from the view of point of presentation in the cost statement, then you must mention this. You must disclose it, that this is the classification that we are following. Any change in the classification of cost which has a material effect on the cost of the product shall be disclosed in the cost statements, which is relevant from the viewpoint of the cost of the product, which has material impact, which has significant impact on the cost of that product. It should be disclosed in the cost statement. Where the effect of such change is not ascertainable, the wholly or partly the fact shall be indicated in the cost statement, right? So this is our first cost accounting standard, that is classification of cost. Very important, the very base of the cost accounting, right? That whatever the cost that you are incurring, it should be properly classified, right? Otherwise, you will not be able to identify the right cost of the product, and accordingly, you will not be able to identify the selling price and what is the profit that you are earning on that product. Right, sir? So this was Cost Accounting Standard 1. In the next lecture, we'll continue with Cost Accounting Standard 2, right? So see you guys in the next lecture. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, keep studying, keep sharing. Thank you so much.